The Decipherment of Cuneiform, the writing system used by several ancient civilizations, is a fascinating tale of scholarly endeavour. Cuneiform, which consists of wedge-shaped marks impressed onto clay tablets, is itself not a language, but a system of writing, a script, in the same way that many modern-day languages use the Latin alphabet. Cuneiform was used to write numerous languages of the ancient Near East, such as Akkadian, Old Persian, Sumerian, and others. Cuneiform was in active use from the early Bronze Age until the beginning of the Common Era. The journey towards deciphering cuneiform began with the work of Olaf Gerhard Teichen, a German Orientalist. In 1798, Teichen made a study of the inscriptions of Persepolis and noted that a series of characters were separated from one another by an oblique wedge. He postulated that these oblique wedges were dividers, or what would be spaces in modern writing. This then led to the suggestion that these groupings of symbols represented individual words. This insight laid the foundational understanding that cuneiform was not merely decorative as scholars had previously thought, but a script and a language. Unfortunately for Teichen, he had mistakenly attributed the text to the Parthian Empire. Consequently, he was unable to make any further progress in translating the scripts. Friedrich Munter, a German-Danish scholar and theologian, improved over the work of Teichen. He thought that the inscriptions must belong to the age of Cyrus and his successors, which led to the suggestion that the inscriptions were in the Old Persian language, and thus probably mentioned Achaemenid kings. He suggested that the long word appearing with high frequency and without any variation must correspond to the word king, and that repetitions of this sequence must mean king of kings. The journey toward deciphering cuneiform continued in earnest, but it was the work of George Friedrich Grotefend in the early 19th century that marked a significant turning point. Grotefend, a German philologist and historian, presented his initial findings in 1802. Atypically, Grotefend's method relied on educated guesses rather than a systematic understanding of the cuneiform script. He assumed that certain recurring groups of characters represented the names of kings well known from Greek historical texts, such as Darius and Xerxes. By comparing these inscriptions with well-known historical accounts, Grotefend was able to decipher a limited number of cuneiform signs, representing syllables and sounds, laying the groundwork for future decipherments. Thus, relying on deductions only, and without knowing the actual script or language, Grotefend obtained a near-perfect translation of the Xerxes inscription. Xerxes the strong king, king of kings, son of Darius the king, ruler of the world. A remarkable achievement. Despite his success, the Göttingen Academy of Sciences and Humanities refused to publish his work in 1802, and it was largely ignored. It was only in 1823 that Grotefend's discovery was confirmed, when the French philologist Champollion, who had just deciphered Egyptian hieroglyphs, was able to read the Egyptian dedication of a hieroglyph cuneiform inscription on an alabaster vase. Champollion, who found that the Egyptian inscription on the vase was in the name of King Xerxes, and the Orientalist Anton-Jean Saint-Martin, who accompanied Champollion, was able to confirm that the corresponding words in the cuneiform script were indeed the words which Grotefend had identified as meaning king and Xerxes. These findings were furthered by the Danish scholar Rasmus Rask in 1826, who was the first to decipher the word Achaemenides and the consonants M and N. Understanding of the Old Persian cuneiform alphabet was achieved by the eminent French scholar Eugene Burnouf, who identified and published an alphabet of 30 letters, most of which he had correctly deciphered. However, the true breakthrough in cuneiform decipherment came with the work of Henry Creswick Rawlinson, a British army officer who became interested in the script during his time in Iran. Whilst it is often claimed that Rawlinson focused his energies on the Behistun inscription, a massive rock relief carved into a cliff face near Kermanshah, this is not actually true. Rawlinson's monumental effort was actually focused on the trilingual inscriptions of Darius and Xerxes at Mount Elvand. Fortuitously, the inscription was written in 3 languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, a dialect of Akkadian, thus providing a unique trilingual key, similar in function to the Rosetta Stone for Egyptian hieroglyphs. Remember, whilst these were all written in the cuneiform script, they are different languages, again, similar to the modern use of the Latin alphabet. Rawlinson began his work on the inscriptions in the 1830s, climbing the cliff face to make paper casts of the inscriptions. He then laboriously compared these texts to deduce the alphabet of Old Persian cuneiform. Thus, with Old Persian deciphered, this was a critical entry point for understanding the Elamite and the Babylonian inscriptions at Mount Elvand. Babylonian cuneiform was deciphered shortly thereafter. However, Elamite cuneiform radically reduced the number of cuneiform glyphs, and its decipherment took another decade. The decipherment of Akkadian cuneiform, the language used in the Babylonian versions of the Behistun inscription, proved more challenging due to its complexity and the script's syllabic nature. Progress in Akkadian decipherment was achieved through the efforts of scholars across Europe, including Henry Rawlinson, Edward Hincks, an Irish clergyman, Jules Oppert, a French scholar, and William Henry Fox Talbot, an English polymath. These scholars, working independently and, as is often the case, in fierce competition with each other, utilize the comparative method, that is, drawing on their knowledge of related languages and the clues provided by Eugene Burnouf and Henry Rawlinson's work on Old Persian and Babylonian cuneiform, to gradually unlock the secrets of the Akkadian language and its cuneiform script. By 1857, the decipherment of Akkadian cuneiform was considered completed. Finally, Sumerian, the oldest language with a script, was also deciphered through the analysis of ancient Akkadian Sumerian dictionaries and bilingual tablets, but this was not achieved until the beginning of the 20th century. The decipherment of cuneiform was a collaborative and competitive process that unfolded over decades, involving the painstaking comparison of inscriptions, linguistic scholarship, and the gradual accumulation of knowledge. This scholarly endeavour not only unlocked the written records of ancient Mesopotamian civilizations, but also had a profound impact on our understanding of ancient Near Eastern civilizations. It has allowed scholars to read historical records, legal codes, literary texts, scientific documents, and even the mundane, everyday correspondence between family and friends. These texts provide invaluable insights into the politics, culture, economy, and beliefs of these ancient societies. Information that would have otherwise been lost to time. The process of decipherment was a monumental task of both linguistic and archaeological scholarship, demonstrating the complexity and sophistication of Near Eastern civilizations and their many contributions to human history. Thank you for watching.